Hi, I'm Wendy Herrmann, your friendly curriculum coordinator. I'm located here on the Beaver Dam campus at extension 4427. I'm here to answer some exciting curriculum questions for you.
What is performance-based instruction, and what does that look like at Marine Park?
Great question. So performance-based instruction is exactly as it sounds. What we're trying to do is get our students to the point of having a certain skill that allows them to perform these tasks that are appropriate for their upcoming field of choice. And what that looks like at Marine Park is that we define outcomes for our programs, and we also then define competencies for each of the courses within those programs. So as long as our students are meeting the competencies for their coursework, and as long as they are then passing the course by doing so, they are then considered competent within the program by achieving those program outcomes. And I can refer you to our handy curriculum and assessment handbook, which is located on the My WTCS Employee Faculty page. And on page 35 of that curriculum handbook, we have a few things that we require as part of our performance-based instruction in our curriculum, and that includes a syllabus, which clearly defines what the competencies are for that course, along with the objectives for the program, what the program outcomes are, or in general education outcomes as you're working with your colleagues in that area, the competencies, the learning objectives for each competency, suggested learning activities, performance assessment tasks, and scoring guides. So those are all of the elements of performance-based instruction. We require those here so that all of our students are being measured and assessed in the same way in order to reach the skills that they need for their work.
So just as a follow-up, does that mean that an instructor can average the grades to get a student to pass?
No, and thanks for asking. But because the criteria that are outlined for each competency become the scoring guide, they either have it or they don't. So you utilize the scoring guide that has been established for the course for each performance assessment task, and that way it's already laid out for you.
Super. What are the recommended grading policies and scales used throughout the college? Is there one that's consistent that is recommended for all courses?
Excellent question. And we are in the process of trying to come to a final conclusion on what that scoring guide should look like. In the meantime, this is our standardized syllabus. You will also find that on my PTC employee on the faculty tab under common faculty forms. And in that syllabus, we have a suggested grading scale. And that one goes like 93 to 100 for an A, 92 to 85 for a B, 84 to 75 for a C, and so on. And that's what we recommend across the board. We've been asking programs amongst themselves if they're finding that that's not the scale that they wish to adopt right now, that they at least agree amongst themselves in the program. One of the things that has been coming up in terms of huge student complaints is that students are getting different grades within their own programs, and that creates mass confusion, and that's not very student focused. So if you are not interested in adopting what's recommended in the syllabus, please work with your colleagues in your program to make sure that you're coming up with one that is consistent for our students.
Great. Do you have any advice on redo policies or late assignment policies?
Yes and no. This is another one of those things that we really do ask that you create consistency within your programs. We are working to come up with some common policies college-wide, but a lot of requirements vary based on the programs. Our nursing programs have very different requirements than our business programs and our IT programs. So one thing that we do recommend, actually we do require that you have a redo policy across the board. So then this again is an opportunity to be working with your colleagues to determine what works best for your program. It is recommended that you determine as part of that policy what is the minimum grade that's required to pass the class. Remember that successful completion here is a C or better. We also recommend that you do have a redo policy to allow students an opportunity to redo an assessment if they do not pass it in their first try. It is your discretion as to how many times you would like that to occur, and a lot of that again depends on the type of course that you're teaching. But keeping that in mind, typically our redo policies only allow a maximum grade of what the minimum is to pass. And so that's again something to consider, but that is what we do recommend. I would work within the timeline of the course. We do not recommend allowing students to do all of their makeups at the end of a semester or all of their redos. It should all be within the timely manner of that assessment itself, especially if that assessment is necessary for that student to move on to the next portion of the class. So that's, again, something to keep in mind. Do work with your colleagues. In my ideal curriculum world, this is the same amongst your program, but also the same amongst all of your instructional areas. So continue to work on that, and I'm happy to consult as needed.
Super. Do you have any advice for grading online or classroom participation and expectations for students? For example, should we link it to core abilities, or is there a good way to do that?
That's a really great question because we're navigating through some of that as well. One thing about performance-based instruction is that the criteria for the competency define the grade for the course, meaning we do not allow extra credit. So please remember that. And I know that that comes up a lot because sometimes the student does go above and beyond. However, if they are adhering to the criteria on the scoring guide, then they should be receiving all the points and therefore no extra credit would be needed. Another thing to keep in mind with that is that anytime you tie a core ability to any of your competencies, that will cover things like participation, effective communication, critical thinking skills, professionalism, and this is the opportunity to be capturing some of that. Is it professional to miss class on a regular basis? It is not. So tie that into a competency that you have so you have the ability to assess that. Because otherwise it becomes a very gray area of what one instructor is doing against another instructor. And again, in performance-based instruction, that does not create the consistency that we need to know that our students have received the skills they need.
Super. Are there any best practices to share regarding any of the above that we talked about?
Yes, go to our curriculum and assessment handbook. We have a ton of stuff in there, just tools and resources for a lot of basic questions that we get about how to do some of these things for setup. I would always recommend connecting with your associate dean, especially one who has extensive curriculum experience. And I also recommend that you call us at any time. I'm available for consult along with our instructional design specialist, Sean Little. We're happy to answer these types of questions and send you to examples of really great practices that we've had from our really positive curriculum developers.